September 11th, 2001. A day we will never forget. If you're hearing my voice, you probably remember where you were on that day and when it happened. In Saginaw, Michigan, a city plagued with gang violence, Officer Joaquin Guerrero sensed God's call to work the dangerous night streets with his canine partner, a 90-pound German Shepherd police dog named Rookie. On 9/11, Guerrero and Rookie responded to Ground Zero to help in the search efforts. For 7 long days, the pair worked the pile with a never-give-up spirit. Since then, with Rookie as his mascot, Guerrero has created the Precinct 131, an educational program to keep kids from turning to gangs. Today, we reflect on 9/11. Please welcome my guest and my new friend to the Unscripted podcast, Mr. Joaquin Guerrero.
Welcome to the Unscripted podcast. My name's Corby LaCroix, and the song you're hearing right now is called Great and Mighty One, available on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your music. But for now, recording from the Unscripted studio at the Junction in Old Hilliard, here's your host and my friend, Aaron Conrad.
Great Redeemer, God of grace.
All right, everybody, welcome to Unscripted from my studios at the Junction in Old Hilliard. Corby, thank you for the introduction on my audio as always. What a day today. Today is a day that I think if you were anywhere after 2001, you remember right where you were. You remember what happened. You remember all of it. And so today I wanted to really honor all of those who were affected. We were all affected, but I think the ones that served, the families that lost loved ones, September 11th should still, and I hope always, mean something to all of us. So let me go ahead and introduce my guest. Joaquin, please introduce yourself and we will go from there.
Okay. My name's Joaquin Guerrero. You can probably see my partner here. This is Little Chief. He's the latest, well, not latest, second latest dog. I got a dog named Storm, but he's 8-month-old and he's too wild. He'd be knocking everything all over with these two in here. So I brought Chief and he's more calm. He's the movie dog. He's the movie star dog right here.
There you go. There you go. Tell us a little bit about you.
I was born and raised in Saginaw, Michigan. I went to the elementary schools. I started at Westdale, and from there I went to the parochial school, St. Peter Paul, then went to Mackinac Middle, and then I just kind of graduated from Dwight D. Eisenhower with your buddy Kurt there. So
there we go. So we got to give a shout out to Kurt Harding, our buddy. Yep. Kurt Harding out of Nashville, who's been on the show, and he's just a friend of show, but he's also just an awesome human being. So yeah, got to give a shout out to Kurt. Thank you for arranging this for us. Today, it's special. And I know you're real busy. There's a lot of people pulling on you and making requests to you because you were involved after 9/11. You went. So why don't you let's start at the beginning, because you and your dog Rookie, first of all, you have a book, Michigan and Rookie, that right. We want to make sure we have all the links up for. So let's talk about Rookie first, and then let's go into maybe 9/11 in a minute. But you made a decision to work in a place that was not exactly safe, even before 9/11. Am I saying that correctly? And can you tell us a little bit about that story?
I started working, as my career is, you go to school, you go to college. After you graduate out of college, I went directly right into the field of law enforcement. Actually, it was a competition between who was going to get me or what I put in to go into the military. And I think it's the prayers of a righteous woman. My mom, she was praying. She didn't want me to go. My dad's military then, but what ended up happening is they lost my paperwork. And I had already gotten into the academy, and I just got done with the academy, and the military calls me and says, "Hey, we want you. We found your paperwork." I go, "Well, if you lost my paperwork, you're going to lose me. I'm already got a job." And I'm like, they'll tell you, "Well, we can put you in the military too." I says, "No, I'm already committed to a job that I have to do." And that was work for the Saginaw City Police Department. And from there,
divine intervention,
just like
divine intervention, right?
Say that again.
I think that's divine intervention, because as I understand the story, you felt a call to work the nights. Is that correct with Rookie?
Yeah. And I like I said, I started out, my whole career was all third shift, and even when I left, I was senior man. for patrolmen and stuff like that. And I always stayed on the night shift because I had the dog.
Yeah.
And when I started out, just like everybody else, patrolman, worked my way up as a detective. I then was reassigned to the FBI and worked for the Federal Gang Task Force. I was part of the gang unit in Saginaw. We had real bad gang problems in Saginaw, and we were trying to put a clamp on it. And then lo and behold, they wanted to bring back the dog program. And I was approached by a sergeant of mine and says, hey, that's something you ought to put in, because they knew I already was training dogs on my side and, doing stuff, reading them, and then doing obedience classes and taking my dog there. So that'd be the perfect job for you. But I really liked the gangs, and I really liked, doing dogs. And I just prayed about it, and God, just opened. I says, well, it's in your hands, Lord. And he opened the door. And thus we restarted the Saginaw City Police Canine Program. It hadn't been at that time it was big, like 95. This was all going on in 94. And then 95 is when they reinstated the dog program after 20 some years. And there was 2 dogs. There was Rookie and Mohawk, and they were brothers. So they started out with 2 dogs, and then my dog was Rookie. And then thus started the career with Rookie. And then Rookie was kind of, like I said, he was what you call a full utility dog. That meaning he did building searches, area searches, evidence searches, handler protection, tracking. His specialty was narcotics. So that was his specialty. And then we worked the streets. We also developed a program, because a lot of times when you're doing it, those that are canine officers know you're always getting called to do PR work with your police department. And I kind of came up with a program called Precinct 131, and it was Say No to Gangs, Guns, Drugs, and Violence. And that was going through because we had that remember Daring Great was going on during that time frame, and Daring Great was more or less for the middle school kids and the high school levels, kind of going into that, where there was nothing for our elementary children from kindergarten up to 4th grade, 5th grade, depending on what school you were at. So I developed that program, Precinct 131, Say No to Gangs, Guns, Drugs, and Violence. And we went in there and we did a big, huge, like kind of a production thing with the dogs. I would do a demo with the dogs, puppet show, songs, saying no to gang and stuff like that. But I used children. I used youth, educating youth. So I had the high schoolers, because they had to do, those that were in high school knew you had to get your National Honor Society hours. So they would apply those to that to get to earn those, and they would come to the school with me. We'd set up the production and do that. Well, lo and behold, and this is kind of a really cool story here, is that when we were doing puppets, I wanted something for German Shepherd. We never had anything in all the puppets, the different types of bad guy that, just to get to educate the kids, but they didn't have a German Shepherd dog. So I then went and called Puppet Productions, because that's where you would order a lot of the big base puppets. And I make a phone call, guy answers the phone. I kind of tell him who I am and what I was doing and everything. And he's like, what do you mean by we don't have a German Shepherd dog in there? I'm like, we don't. So he kind of pulls his catalog and he's going through it. He goes, you're right. They had Basset Hounds, they had Hounds, they had, you name all different types of cats, whatever. They have a German Shepherd dog. And then he goes, do you know who I am? And I'm like, no, I just called the phone and it's a salesperson. He goes, no, I'm the president and founder of Puppet Productions.
Wow.
My name's Bill Hawk. And I'm like, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, you ever hear of McGruff? And I go, yeah. He goes, well, I created McGruff.
Wow.
Like,
McGruff the crime dog, right?
Yeah, McGruff the crime fighting dog.
Okay, all right, yeah.
That the fight, you see him, he's like he's a bloodhound.
Right.
And there was Gilbert the puppet. You see him big. He's in the big Christian church where a little boy rides a bicycle and everything. Because I created McGruff. And I'm like, no way. He says, I like the concept of what you're doing. He says, I'm going to make your dog a puppet out of your dog, based after your dog.
Wow.
And we worked together and they made that, and that went nationwide. And then you see them, it says, it's based on the looks of Rookie and everything like that. And it's used to this day, in there for puppets and stuff like that. It's Rook, the German Shepherd dog.
Did they? So they named the dog Rookie?
Yeah, Rookie. Yeah, his name.
They named it Rookie. That's
awesome. Based after Rookie. It looks like him, everything. And and there's some photos. I don't know if I had it around here, but if you go on there, you'll see it in the archives of Saginaw News. I'm sitting there holding this puppet.
That's fantastic.
Next to Rookie, man. It looks just like him.
That's fantastic. It's amazing. Yeah. So you and Rookie were, and I have twice gone on ride-alongs. I actually have several friends because I back the blue, and I've made several friends that are in law enforcement, and had the opportunity to do 2 ride-alongs. And on both ride-alongs, it was in a not so good area of where we live. And the one time we did I was just riding along, but my friend did had a suspicion of a vehicle. They pulled it over. They called out the canine unit, and those dogs are amazing. It is unbelievable how they can scent the scent. I don't even know what I'm talking about, but at the end of the day, it was incredible because this dog went right to the place that it needed to. It was incredible. And then they actually took me back to their facility and showed me how they train the dogs. Again, remarkable. How did you get into the what were you a dog person before? I don't know how to, that's probably not even the right. Welcome to Unscripted. I don't know if that's the right way to say.
I kind of raised German Shepherds and had them.
Okay.
And that's why that sergeant goes, they knew I had German Shepherd dogs and stuff like that. And I did these. And then he says, well, it's something you ought to do. And I'm like, it was torn because I liked doing what I was doing, working with the gangs, and then going there. So it's kind of funny. You look at your career, kind of laugh, because I went from the gangs to the dogs, and everybody kind of laughs. You're supposed to go up, kind of makes it the way it sounds. But so my background was, so you got it. Background was I had dogs as pets and stuff, and trained them and did obedience. So I kind of had the concept. I did the Schützen with them and then the stuff like that, but I never did the police training. So when I went in there, they brought in people that on a board that interviewed us that would be non-biased. So then they came in and had all these 10 questions, and then you had to answer them. And I scored out of that. I think we had a lot of officers that put in for it in the department, and out of that, Ruben and myself became the 2 top officers to get the dogs.
So I'm kind of fascinated by it. So what is a typical day for a canine? What was a typical day prior to what we'll talk about in a minute, and that's 9/11. But prior to that, what's a typical day for a canine officer?
For what, I still do what I do as a canine officer now, because I have my dogs and stuff. Let's say my sleeping cycle was nights, so I'd work. So when I go home, I'd go to bed. When I get up, I'd give them their breakfast. So then they would be fed. Then throughout the day, I would do whatever I needed to do with them, take them, break them, work on a little bit of obedience and stuff like that. I have my gear, check my gear, make sure, because we had take-home cars and that. So you kind of make sure your car is up and ready, vacuumed and cleaned for them. Check their gear, make sure their leashes aren't cracked or any damage done. Because after a while, they get worn out from getting wet and damp and stuff. Then I would just do my normal stuff around the house, like you normally would. The dog they stayed. Our dogs stayed in the house, so you'd build that bond. Okay. They didn't sleep in the bed or anything. They had their crates, or they could sleep, on the floor. But they were part of the household family, so that it just makes it a lot better, because it's kind of like if you set the dog outside, they kind of know, because they're pack orientated. They kind of feel like they'll be desocialized in a way. It just depends on the programs that they're doing, but us, it worked great for that's how we were taught at Canine Academy to do that. And it was mandatory our dogs stayed in the house, because that was one thing they checked, which you have problem dogs staying in the house. There's certain guidelines. Is your yard fenced? Because your whole life turns upside down. It's like you brought home a newborn baby, and that's what you are. But he doesn't talk, but he needs the needs. You got to feed him. You got to take care of him. You got to make sure he's groomed and cleaned. And, if he gets into a skunk, you got to clean him and bathe him. You don't want to bring him in, bring all that garbage in there. So your whole world just changes, because now not only are you responsible for yourself on the street and the officers, you got to take care of a partner, which is a dog. And
so the dog lives in your home?
Right.
That's fascinating to me. So unlike most of the other guys at night, when they go home and they say goodnight to their partner and go home, you take your partner home with you.
Yeah.
It's 24 hours, right?
Yeah.
Wow. So 24/7, 365, you guys are together.
Yeah. So
wow.
Yeah. And that's the bond that a lot of times some officers don't quite understand until you work canine, because you're doing double the work. Not only in general, they think, where does it get to do this? No, you don't realize I still have to I'm mandatory responsible for my calls in my sector, my area that I still have to write, along with when you call me over to assist you, I have to write another report. So we're kind of doing double the work in a way.
Wow.
Sometimes somebody will say, oh, I got that call, let them go, or somebody else will fill on it. Depends what it is.
Right.
But if it's a canine call and it's a serious call, they won't stack. If it's a report call, they'll stack it. And when you get off done doing that, you just go back and go over it. Meaning a report call, if you had a breaking and entering and there was nothing there, a car larceny, somebody broke in there, you'd stop and do a knock and talk and then find out what's going on, take the report and ship it in. But if it's an in progress call, then the other officers will respond to that because I'm responding to maybe an armed robbery and that might be a domestic. So they'll send another car in place of that.
Fascinating. Honestly, it's fascinating because I think we see canine units, we see, in all our local neighborhoods, and I don't think any of us realize how much goes into that. And that was one of the questions that like I said, I do have a few friends that send me some texts that wanted questions. So I might circle back and we might have already covered it, but I do have a couple of questions in my text, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So 9/11 happens. First of all, where were you when 9/11 happened? And then, so let's start there. Where were you when 9/11 happened?
When 9/11 happened, I think everybody will always remember the day of what happened.
100%.
I was actually in court. I had a court case, juvenile court case. And usually when they're bringing the juveniles up back from holding to go through the procedures, and we did our court case and to decide what's going to happen when they're at the hearing, and they decide once it's done, so we're sitting back in the area, and it's like the break room area, and everybody's standing around by the break room. They're looking at the TV, and I have to walk up. I'm like, hey, what's up? And they point, they go, check this out. The plane just hit the towers. I'm like, what? And, that was that first plane. So you're looking, and our case the hearing had already been adjourned. And so they already so I just went back there to just fill out some stuff. And then I was getting ready to take off. So I'm kind of watching everything unfold on the TV up in the screen and that, and everybody's like, holy smokes. So by the time I get home, I'm listening to the radio as I'm driving, like, wow. Because then by the time I get in to my house, my parents have to be staying because they just sold their house the day before up at Hubbard Lake, and they just sold it the day before to a pilot. Can you believe that? To a pilot?
Wow.
On the 10th. It would have been like Friday, like today, and then or Friday on the 10th, and then they were staying at my house till they could get their stuff situated and move into their new home and stuff like that. And I'm like, hey, turn the TV on. They're like, we're watching. I said, yeah. So we're watching everything right there. All of a sudden, the second plane slams into the towers.
Right.
So now we're watching everything on forward. You're like, holy, right, what's going on? Then you see the Pentagon, and then everything else is starting. And then the towers at 10:04, you just seen everything just starting to unfold as we're going. Now we knew stuff was this wasn't good. This we knew right then and there that we were under attack.
Right.
And that was the biggest fear of what's coming next.
Right.
So now everybody's on alert.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, even our emergency management was going crazy because they didn't know what to do, because now everybody's fearing. So they got to start preparing and get stuff ready. Start calling in people if something does happen, and because we didn't know how the people were going to react.
Right. Yeah, nobody knew what to do. Right. I mean, we didn't know, is the whole world is the whole United States under attack? What's next? Who's next?
At that time, it was just kind of glued to the TV.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking. I had two buddies that were there that were New York officers and stuff. And now my concern is, I see, and I knew they had to be there. One was a state trooper, and the other was a New York officer. And so I'm like, oh God, and Cyril was right in the midst of that. He worked right down in Manhattan, lower Manhattan, where everything was. And so I'm thinking, my gosh, I know he's there. And then you see the towers come down, you're like, oh, right,
Right.
So now you're kind of concerned about that. So the next, as everything's trying to unfold, I'm trying to get a hold of our emergency management. Then I was able to get through and get a number. And then I was able to get through. And finally, emergency management said, yeah, come on down here. And but the chance of me calling emergency management when everything is all chaotic I always say it was God. Right. Because there's no way that Joaquin Guerrero is going to dial emergency management for New York, and a guy's going to go, hello, emergency management, how can I help you? During the time of everything is just in total chaos.
So was this the day of? This was the day of?
The next day. We're still watching. Nobody's going. I'm trying to get numbers. Finally was able to get a number call that afternoon of the next day, because I left that evening, that next night, going in the morning and headed out driving there. So,
and that was a question I know somebody had for me. You volunteered.
Right. Right.
You
Because at that
just
time I
packed
called
it up
once
and
they
headed
said,
that way.
Yeah, they said, I told them what I had. I had canine. He says, get them here. Because they knew right then and there they needed dogs. Because I didn't see what went on, but they were there. They knew the sheer destruction that was there. So they says, yeah, we need them, because the more dogs, the better, because then you're going to be going 24 hours nonstop. So I contact my department, said, hey, they need dogs. They want me. Go. They said, go. So we can't pass it. I don't care. I got vacation time. If you have to use it, whatever, I didn't care. I just packed my gear up, got everything that I needed, and then headed to New York.
Wow. So you, if I understood you right, you took vacation time, but you basically said, I'm going and I'm taking Rookie with me.
And then eventually the department, they granted it back because of what had happened. Because at the time they didn't know.
Okay.
And then, so what I did is I said, use my vacation time for the time frame. And then eventually what happened later on.
And that wasn't that.
They did.
And that wasn't a judgment on your department. It was more of a question of, you just went. You said, I'm going, and you went.
I just went. They said go. They granted it. If it was called, TV time where you don't have no time or whatever, I said, I don't care if I don't get paid. I'm not worried about it. We're dealing with a serious situation here. Because everybody wanted to help out the best they can.
And I think that's important, because at the end of the day, 9/11 was the worst of us, or not the worst of us. It was one of the worst things that's happened to our country, obviously, but it brought out the best of us, because people like yourself said, you know what? I don't care. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care if I get paid. I'm going. And, not everybody could go and serve. And we'll talk a little bit about what you did when you were there, but all of us, we held a door for someone. We said we were sorry. For a minute, the United States was kinder to one another. You know what I mean? And people were, we were quickly reminded what's important in life, I think, is what I take away from 9/11 is, and I still try to remember this, because we quickly can move away from it and get back to our business and our own stuff. Right. But I think when 9/11 happened, we became very aware of each other and other people, and we cared. Someone like yourself said, I'm going to go help, and I'm going to do what I can. So first of all, thank you for your service in that time, because I can't imagine what you even experienced when you got there. So let's talk about that. Like, when you got there, what were you faced with?
Yeah. After emergency management already told us that we would report to Giant Stadium. So you drive through, we get across, we get to Giant Stadium, and everybody's staging there, because we had to wait to get an escort across. Because at that time they had already gotten threats that there was a possibility that the bridges might be blown. There was just so much stuff going on. And they wanted to make sure they were escorting. I mean, you're talking security wise, are these guys legit? Could these guys be there to set stuff up, do things? So they wanted to make sure they seen us, got our names, got all our information, and they took us down. Mm-hmm. And once we went down to ground zero, we met at, there's this high school that's there. I can't think of the name. I think it's like Sylvan or something again with an S. That was kind of the mini incident command center there at Zero. The real incident command, the main one, was at an unknown location. They wouldn't give it out because of everything what had happened. And if there was a second hit, and if they knew where it was at, they were afraid they would have lost all communications of everything.
Sure.
So we were at the high school. We checked in. They knew we were there. We gave them all our names. They took information off our credentials and stuff like that. And then I went from there to that. They took us down to the pile. They'd escort us down. We went down to actual ground zero itself, the pile. So when you hear that term, the pile is where everything was at, where it was the whole zero. Right. So when we went down there to that point, there was another kind of half shift incident command staging center, they called it. And they have what they would have there would be your battalion chiefs were there of the fire department or whoever could be there that would be in charge. So once we left the high school, went there, made contact, they go make contact with them, let them know you're there, you'll check in, and then they'll give you your assignment, what you're to do at the pile. So everything was still chaotic, because you had Port Authority, FBI, Secret Service, military, because everybody had certain areas. Well, it was in at Port Authority, so they were in charge of the towers. They were in charge. No FBI. Now it's a terrorist attack. We're at war now. Military. So you had all these different states of heads that were there, and trying to figure out what was going to be what was going to do what, and everything. So it's kind of still chaotic in their aspect. Us as a lot of times police officers, and even different cities in that, New York, they have generations of law enforcement, firemen, police officers. It's kind of hard. So what you see is their great grandfather was a fireman, and his father up to present day, the grandson. So what we were dealing with there, I think a lot of the American people can realize that or relate to it. Those that were there, it's normal. But those that don't, usually like in your law, you may have a cousin that's a police officer and nobody else, or he's the first one, and maybe his son might go into it. There, they had generations on generations. Well, what happened is when those towers came down, they lost the fathers and the sons. The grandfathers were coming out of retirement to assist and set up incident commands and out there working. Because now you had boots that were the younger ones.
Gosh.
And then the dads that were so I mean, that's stuff that people don't kind of realize, because like, when we do a job, your dad doesn't, it doesn't, unless you're a generational farmer and that, or something like that, or whatever, iron worker. But in that law enforcement field, you're going generation upon generation. So now you had grandfathers coming out, standing there and doing the job, because they knew how they lost firemen that knew how to work those pumpers and the emergency ESU units and stuff like that. So they got wiped out when the towers came down.
Wow.
So that's what we were dealing with there.
So, man, I have a million questions now. But when you took Rookie, my understanding, Rookie was trained for, you said narcotics, right? Was he also trained? Because help me understand. When you arrived, you were looking for people. You were on a recovery mission for people. Is that correct? Okay. So how was he ready for that, or like how did that work?
Well, what happens is you have two types of dogs. So you got like dogs that can find live people, and then you have cadaver dogs that will find deceased people. Well, deceased meaning like bone type skeleton. Those are your cadaver bodies been passed away or deceased for a day, couple days, or months, or whatever. You're dealing with bone fragments and that. Since it was so, how would you say, it just happened, we still had live people, so you still had live odor.
Right.
So the dog would still indicate on the human odor of a person that could be in a cavern or buried underneath something. So it'd be no different than a guy hiding in a box or behind a door, or in the woods somewhere. So we were kind of doing an area search. You would clear the area. I call it area evidence search area. So you're searching, and the dog would indicate on the human odor. And then once we indicate on human odor, he'd bark or scratch at it, we would check that location. Cadavers would do the same thing, because their specialty is like bone, teeth, because they have that odor, that human odor. So as if it would be like something that could have been 6 months, a year, 2 years, dog would be able to find something like that. Our dogs might get a residual hit if it might catch a whiff of it, but they're not a cadaver dog.
So Rookie was looking for survivors, and then human odor of body parts. Did you guys have any success?
Yeah,
you did.
And it was
awesome.
It's hard to, when you depict or try to explain to individuals, we weren't finding people like you would see, like, oh, somebody's laying there and they're deceased. We were finding parts. So we were finding hands, feet, a portion of flesh. So you can only imagine, was they guesstimate about 3,000 people that perished, that were just went through a tumbler and then scattered. You're talking 16-acre radius, pile 40 feet tall, 7 stories deep.
Wow. And that pile was dangerous itself, right? There could have been, what was it? Hot, what do they call them? Flashes or? Yeah,
you would get a flash of what they would, because see, Y2K was only just a year ahead of us. So everybody had to prepare for, remember Y2K, but what's
Right.
Y2K, everybody thought everything was going to crash and shut down.
End of the world, right?
And everything would go down. So they had to prepare, and they had all the diesel fuel, the gasoline, everything at those towers to maintain everything, because that's our trade market system. Everything worked out of that World Trade Centers,
right? Because
of the money exchange and all that stuff. So you can't have that go down, because it's going to shut everything down in the economy wise. So that's why that's why it burned. That's why you see the photos of the smoke billowing. Those are of all the diesel fuel, the gasoline, the oil that was stored to run it, because they didn't know how long, so they had to have an X amount, and then the vehicles that were underneath in the parking ramps, and the subways that were down underneath there. And then you had the materials from the inside the building, the clothes, the couches, the chairs, everything that was in there, that was burning too also.
So you guys were,
like an oven. You could feel the heat, right? When you walk up there, it was like 85, 90 degrees, just you could feel the heat. It was hot and warm.
Wow. Yeah, and it was incredibly dangerous, because it was unstable.
Yeah.
It was unstable.
Wow. Right, yeah, because anytime we walked out, that's why they had us check in. So when we would check in, we would check the dogs in, they would take their vitals and everything, they'd get our names, we would go out. When we come we'd come off the pile, they would have to check out, so they knew who you were. We still got a guy out. Where is he? Well, if you didn't check out, now everybody's looking for you because maybe you fell through, and now they got to try to rescue you. So that's why it was so important that you checked in. One guy forgot one time, and he got distracted for something, and they found him, and he got his butt chewed, because everybody, they stopped everything, and now they're looking for a guy. And then, he just happened to somebody had said something, and he walked away for a second and didn't check out. And then they did a head count, and then, where is he? And he was sitting there talking to somebody, and oh no, they heard his name. And then he's like, oh boy. Wow. So we had that happen one.
That's amazing. I don't think many of us obviously have that kind of perspective on what was happening there. What day did you arrive? Do you remember the date?
It would have been the third day, going into the third day.
So like the 14th, somewhere in there.
The first day, the second day, I left on the second, going into the third day. So we were there the third day.
Were you there when President Bush was there?
Yeah. Matter of fact, I was there to see President Bush talk. He was probably, I say, about 20 feet away from me, giving his speech on the bullhorn and that, and all the stuff that was going on. Giuliani had come up to me, and I didn't recognize it was Giuliani. I was just sitting chilled back like this, and he seen me sitting off the side, and I see this entourage of people coming. I'm just thinking, I didn't think nothing of it. He goes, hey, son. And he looked up, and I'm like, yeah. And he says, where are you from? And I go, Michigan. He goes, Michigan? And then they're talking, and then I was like, well, God bless you for coming. And they kind of had to keep moving. And then Bloomberg was there too. Whoever was the mayor, and then they had the governor was there too also. And then Hillary was also following in the thing there. Wow. Then one of Bloomberg's aides come running back, and they got my name and stuff like that. They ended up sending me a thank you. And then actually, when we'll get more about Rookie, they sent a letter out regarding for Rookie.
Wow.
And we'll share a little bit more about that. And I'll go more in depth in that. I want to jump ahead on stuff.
Sure. No, you're good. No. And there's only so much we can know and remember about that day and reflect. But that's I don't know who hears this and what their political affiliation is, but at the end of the day, it was iconic, and it was important when President Bush stood there and said, we heard you. Pretty soon the rest of the world will hear you. As a nation, we needed to hear that. And again, I don't know who's going to hear that. Some people might've just turned off because they have a certain political whatever. At the end of the day, for me as a dad, a brand new dad, my son was only 1 year old when that happened. I still have this chilling picture of him standing in front of the TV and looking back at us with these big blue eyes. And, it was the news was on, and it was obviously on every channel. It was on everything. And he's looking back at us, and it's almost like he's thinking what just happened. And I just remember sitting there thinking, what in the world is he going to go through? What just happened to our nation? And at that time we needed a president who stood up in front of everybody and just gave us confidence. And I thought, I was actually watching the Netflix series that's on right now that just came on. And I'm just reminded that I think President Bush was at the time, I'm not here to talk politics. I'm just, at the time, I think he was our commander in chief, and he was a leader in unbelievable circumstances. So it's pretty neat that you got to be there for that iconic moment.
And I remember when they stopped, because everything just kind of stood still. Mm-hmm. And you could see the guys were like, come on, because they want to get back out there. So, you had some that were like, we can't be doing this. We got, but they didn't realize how important that was.
Right.
That was like a cheer, a thing to give you a motivational speech to go, right. Guys, we're supporting you. Keep doing what you're doing. And you could tell it, see it in his face, sincerity of at the time when he was giving the speech and stuff. And the chief handed him the bullhorn and stuff like that. And the minute it was over, boom, we all went right back to work, man.
Awesome.
And, you would sit back and when the dogs were there, I remember when we'd go down there and they checked. I remember when I checked in afterwards, we go back down there. When I first got there, and that's and this will make sense once I share it to you. They all got that Jersey accent, that Brooklyn accent.
Right.
What's your name? Well, they talk like that and be like,
right.
But they, you know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. So they go, what's your name? I go, Joaquin Guerrero. They're like, what? What? This is old battalion chief, this old guy, sure. This old guy, he's one of the grandfathers of one of the things. He kind of looked at me. He goes, where are you from? Like that. And I go, I'm from Michigan. He goes, well, that's your name now. We're calling you Michigan. So that's the name.
So New York, right?
So yeah. So that's why I said Michigan and Rookie, Guardians of. That's why you've seen. That's where the name Michigan Rookie. So every time I'd sit back, that guy he never forgot me. Because it was all the time. And there's like, where's that guy? Because I was always sitting off to the side there, and they would be yelling dog, and I'm like, holy smokes, I'm waiting. I just come off. I think I sat down for about 30 minutes, yelling again. I'm like, what the heck? So I get up, and the guy goes, they hear Michigan, like that. I come up, I'm like, yeah, I just got up. We need you back out there again. So I go back out there again with Rook. And,
wow.
Same thing. So everybody goes, hey, Michigan. And I wrote it on the back of my helmet, which, you see it right here.
Yeah.
You see it.
Yeah.
But there it is. You see it on the back of the helmet there. It says Michigan.
There it is. That's great. Yeah. So you have a book called Michigan and Rookie. And now, so that explains the title. You mentioned it. Do you want to talk a little bit about, let me ask you one more question before we go into that. Sorry, Unscripted. How did you decompress after all of this?
It was kind of hard because there were too many people from Michigan that went there. You know what I mean? I think I couldn't really talk to nobody. And so you kind of kept it in. You kind of share some stuff, but they wouldn't relate. And I didn't want to make it like people want to pick your brains and say, what do you got? And this and that. Say, I talked to this guy, and I didn't want to be this guinea pig because, they were wondering what was going on with these guys that had seen that. So it wasn't until I would go some training, and then because after I did that, my background kind of went into, I did a lot of the terrorist training afterwards, weapons of mass destruction, explosives. I got a bomb dog, started working. That was my way of working and doing what I needed to do, and got certified and trained in those areas to do that stuff. So, I went to Arizona, they were to New Mexico, where they had all the places where we do explosions and terrorist stuff. And so we knew what to do and how to investigate the cases and stuff. So I educated myself because I was right there and could relate what went on. And, so when I would go there or somebody would say, I was there, it was, oh, wow, we'd start talking because they didn't have nobody to talk to. Mm-hmm. And then it was like you sang like a little canary, like a bunch of talking. Right. Oh, yeah, remember this? Oh, yeah, I remember that, So that was my way of kind of decompressing. I would kind of share stuff, but a lot of stuff you don't get to really share because people couldn't relate to some of the stuff because they weren't there.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I always say, you knew the ones that were there because you had that stare. It's like the guys from Nam, they had that 1,000-yard stare, and you learned fast. And I remember when we got there, and I was talking to this one guy, and we're sitting off to the side, and he throws me the Sharpie, and I'm like, what do you need me to sign? He goes, you write your Social Security on your body, bud.
On your what?
On your body.
Oh my gosh.
So we wrote our social security on our arms, our legs, our thighs, all different parts. He goes, something happens to you here, man. He says, I'm not trying to scare you. It probably ain't going to find you, because if something falls on you, it's going to tear you up.
Oh,
so now we know who you are.
Wow.
So sure enough, we wrote your social security on your leg, on your arm. You had something to identify your chest. So you had different multiple limbs that you had if something happened. So, you'd see it. Guys would do that.
Wow.
Because we didn't know. We're walking into that place and we could have gotten attacked again too. We didn't know if something blew up, because you remember, you got the gas.
Right.
Well, that was, why would you do something like that? Well, really think about it. They don't know who I am. I'm from Michigan.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
If my wallet gets blown away and I'm gone, at least they find an arm. They're like, well, who's this number? And it's got my social security number. They look it up. That's Officer Guerrero. He's from Michigan. Okay, we got something to identify him.
Wow.
So you learn fast. I mean,
that's why it's so. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I
said you learned fast to live.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there. I mean, it was like, and it took me right to, now I know what those guys in Vietnam went to. Anybody who goes in battle, when you first go in there, you learn right away. Don't do this, do this. You need this, you don't need that. Same thing. Don't bring that. I mean, I went in there, just me, the dog, and the harness, and a water bottle. You really couldn't drink anything because you're bringing in the carcinogens, but your mask, and that was it. You had your pack, whatever you'd taken, and left it off to the side there. You'd come back and be gone. Where'd it go? Because they moved. Every time stuff was being moved, and they would say, well, it's down over there, another 30, 40 yards over that way. Just go, you'll see it. It's off to the side there.
Wow.
So you go over there and get it. So there was just little things. Another thing, you would come in, and where we're from, we don't have tall buildings.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I think our highest is the Second National Bank. It's about 70, let's say about 70 feet up, big or more, could be that. They're just not big buildings like you see skyscrapers.
Yeah.
So I remember you're sitting there and you learn fast and you're watching. And I remember some kid come up and he's leaning up against the building like this. He's kind of just sitting there, and you could tell he just got in, he's fresh and everything. And I tap him, I go, what? And he goes, looks at me, he goes, what? And I said, I pointed up like that. And he goes, what? I go, you don't want to stand there. He's like, that glass breaks, I'll cut you in half, dude.
Oh my goodness.
Get away from it. So where you sit, you always look where you're at, because anything could fall and cut you in half or kill you or crush you. Because everything was so unstable. So you were always constantly, you were in 100% survival.
Wow.
360, your head was spinning just like a top.
And that's why I think it's so important that not only for the victims, not only for those that served and our first responders, not only for the families, man, there are people that came and like yourself, who dropped everything they had, dropped everything they did, and went and served in unknown conditions. Completely, like what you're telling me right now is something none of us ever consider. We just all talk about, well, never forget, man. That's why we never need to forget, because that was massive. And there's a lot of people that served in unbelievable conditions. I mean, what you're telling me right now is like blowing my mind. I never knew, you see the pile and you whatever. And we heard, President Bush on the bullhorn and, but man, I don't know, unless you were like yourself, boots on the ground there doing the service every single day. I don't know that a lot of us can get our head around what you were actually going through and what we had to go through to get the place back to where we are today. And thank God we're there. But, man, my mind is blown. So let's get to Rookie, because you wrote the book. And I don't know if those two go together or how. Let's talk about Rookie and maybe that ties into the book itself.
Yeah. Rookie was a workhorse when we were there. We were probably putting in 12 to 14 hours a day, give or take a few. Sometimes it can be a little bit longer, 16, just depends on what the day was and what we were doing. And then a lot of times we would rest. They said, well, where'd you sleep? Sometimes we slept right there on the streets. That's why you see a lot of photographs of the guys chilled back and the dogs are laying next to them and guys are curled up and stuff. And you would eat that they would bring. A lot of those and a lot of the restaurant businesses went under because they gave all what they had to feed the first responders. And we got fed very good food because what it was going to spoil anyhow, so they're making it. What people don't realize there was no power, no nothing there for several days.
Wow.
So everything was running on generators. Fires were still burning because the hose lines and everything was broken. They couldn't get that. Fire trucks are totally demolished. There's a photo that you see that they got all those fire trucks all lined up that are off brush from when the towers came down. So they had no fire trucks. They have 5 boroughs there in New York. They have ESU units. Those are like kind of SWAT emergency guys that can do building stuff like that. 4 of them were, they said 3 of them were damaged to unrecognizable. 1 was halfway through, but they only had 1 good one. So they were down on that stuff. I mean, and then they had the bodies that the people that worked those that weren't there. They had to call people in from the academy to kind of come in there and do that, to help assist, because they didn't have enough boots to work that, because everything was just, they had to protect this, do this, cover this. They still had the vaults down there at World Trade Center with the gold and silver and everything. So you had to protect and guard that and get to that so that wouldn't get stolen.
Oh my gosh.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff that you don't even know behind the scenes that went.
Right.
So with Rook, that being with Rook, he would go in, go out. You know, when we first got there, there's another little story we got there. You know, the dogs had to have their protective pads on their feet, their booties. I left my booties at home. I remember as I get there, I'm like, oh man, they're sitting right on my counter. I remember I forgot, I grabbed these and I walked out when I left and they grabbed them. So when I got down to ground zero, the dogs are always checked in at a MASH unit, it's a mobile medical hospital. And they take their vitals and they look at them, they do all that stuff. And then I'm like, if you guys wouldn't have to have any booties, which in they're like, booties, what are you talking about? It says feet protection, like shoes, boots for the dogs. They're like, no. And I'm like, okay, this might sound silly now, you know, because I'm talking to some female veterinarians and vet techs. I says, you guys wouldn't have to have a Kotex pad, would you? And they go, what? No. I go, Kotex pad. And they're like, you mean a Kotex pad? I go, yeah.
Right.
Go, why? Right. I go, I need that. I'm going to make a booty out of it. I can put it at the bottom of my dog's foot. I need your vet wrap right there. So then we put the Kotex pad on the bottom and we wrap the foot in that vet wrap, or that, you know, that Klingon type stuff that you see made out of stretchy rubber. And that went on there. Well, then they go, well, they're like, God, that worked pretty good. I said, well, what I need now is you need to put a booty call out for us to get some booties for the dogs. So thus the booty call kind of went out. And
completely
then
different kind.
Start float in, you know, it's kind of hilarious. But then you'd see it, you remember on TV, remember the news article that's like, hey, if any of you guys are there, they need booties down there, and then they look at the booty call. You know, so yeah.
You got to clarify. You got to clarify. That would have been a whole nother. Anyway, that's a different show.
Yeah.
So,
but you know, it's kind of, you got to laugh at some stuff.
That's right. That's right. And I hate to laugh on a somber thing, but yeah.
You know, and so, you know, Rook was there and he did those times and stuff, and they loved him. He did also dog therapy work down there. And that was kind of cool because he was a therapy dog also. I trained him to do therapy work. So he was down there and you would see the firemen and the police officers just get down like at his level and lay there, and they would sit there and just talk to him. And like, dude, when you go out there, this guy, can you find my brother? And that's what was heart-wrenching, because you got to find my dad, or you got to find my mom, or whatever. Yeah. And they'd have these personal little talks, and the dog would just lay on their lap and they're just talking to him. And this is what he looks like. And this is what he's, you know, and he kind of
desperate, right?
Now, they would just open up to him. It was their way of, and they were venting, and they were crying.
They're desperate.
Yeah, because they didn't know. They knew that that dog had a tool that we as humans, that no machine or anything could do, and it was his nose, the olfactor of that dog.
Right.
Wow. So, you know, and you see there's photos in the book I took of some people, their feet giving them water, and then fireman's laying down there with them, he's consulting with them and talking to the dog, and it's just really heart touching to see that. And that the dogs were there. And even when we were still resting, we were doing work that way too, therapy work. So,
wow. And you were there for 7 days, correct? Did I read that somewhere right?
Yeah, in between there working, and then I had the days of travel, and then I had a rest day. That rest day was a tough day because I found my buddy. I was able to make contact with him, And then actually I was able to stay a night at his place,
Nice.
a couple nights there, and I'd go back and forth, take the subway, and then I'd stay down there and go back and forth. And he's the one, he goes, dude, he knew it already, because he was still working the outskirts and that, and every now and then he'd stop in and he'd go down with me and that. And he goes, dude, you got to get out of there, man. He goes, you can just see it. I had that 1,000-yard stare. He'd go like this, and I'd be sitting there at dinner, and he's like, hey, get back here, man. You're at 0. You need to come back here. I'm like, I got to get back. He goes, no, you need to chill, man. You're going to fry your brain.
Right.
And that was more or less so I had that one day. He goes, no, we're going. So he took me out kind of to see New York a little bit. And it was hard because you knew your heart was there.
Still there.
I had a
right.
tool that they needed for closure for those families and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, wow. And that bucket brigade was something else, man. I'll tell you what, that bucket brigade was our dog. You know, I don't know if you heard about the bucket brigade.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like you remember seeing that pile and you're like, they're never going to get that cleared out. That's going to take forever. Yeah. And here we are. Like, you know, that was one bucket at a time. It was a lot of volunteer, as you said, you know, people like yourself dropped everything. And that's what I meant when I said earlier, it was the best of us as a nation afterwards. Yeah. Everybody just had that volunteer and that servant attitude to just go. And it was almost like they just followed a signal, followed a calling, and grabbed a bucket and did whatever they could. You know, as tragic as it was, I wish at times, I don't ever want September 11th again, but I would wish as a nation that someday we could be who we were on the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, right? I mean, that week afterwards, because we all realized what was most important. And again, I don't ever want that for our country. So hopefully that's not coming across that way. But what I would want is us to hit pause again without a tragedy and be who we were in those following days, much like yourself, someone that just said, I'm going to go and I'm going to go serve. And wow, I have still a million questions, but so the book, let's talk about the book, because you do have a book and you know, so let's talk about the book. What's the book about? Is it a lot of what we've covered, or what is it?
Yeah, it's actually kind of, when I wrote that book, I wanted people to know what police officers and police canine handlers go through. So it's kind of my biography and my life story growing up. And we kind of started like when I got the dog, or kind of went back into my little bit of my childhood, a little bit of history, what I did. My mom and dad bounced back forward, and the dog is actually telling the story. So it's third person. You'll see sections.
Oh, that's very cool.
I'm talking to the dog's telling the story, but I'm talking to the dog's telling his side of the view.
Oh, that's great.
So it kind of goes in there as to when I meet Rookie for the first time and how I go from there, and just as it keeps going on down the line throughout our career and what we encountered as partners and in training, building that bond together, silly moments, moments at home, you know, on the streets, stuff that we did with kids, my career, and then 9/11, then what happened afterwards, and it tells what happened to Rookie and what he went through, and then up to when I left the department.
And we talked a little bit beforehand in our very short pregame, because I don't want anybody to think that this is not unscripted, because it is unscripted. But we did have a quick question, and one of my questions for you was Rookie, and Rookie has passed, but you have now, you've got another partner or two. How many partners do you have now?
Yeah. Well, after when Rookie, this is kind of because it was kind of strange because a lot of people, and I did this and I had to because I knew what was coming along, because Rookie had touched so many students, young kids, I mean, in there. And this happened after 9/11 happened, and we had a lot of damage control to go, because there were a lot of kids that were afraid. And my job was, I talked to you because I got to get in those schools.
Yeah.
I got to let those children know that because they knew he was there, that he's here to protect them, and stuff's not bad, it's going to happen. So we went and hit our county had 77 elementary schools.
Wow. So
I had to and I worked third shift, 8 o'clock at night till 4 a.m. I had to get up early in the morning, and I hit every single one of those schools until they were completed. And then letting them know, kind of sharing about 9/11, that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And then when Rookie got sick, that was he ended up getting cancer, because when and I talk more about it and get really in depth in it in the book there. But when Rookie, what they did is after we come back, you're saying, well, how did you debrief whatever they did? Well, they set up a 5-year study on the handlers. They wanted to find out how this was going to affect the handlers, because we were the ones that were locating the bodies and finding along, because we had to go into these places where a lot of people, there wasn't a place in New York that was, because we had IDs, you had to have special IDs and everything to get to where you needed to go. And that was the only way you're getting in, and that card was getting you into wherever it was. And so we could go anywhere. So when we would go around there and search and check, so we were in spots and places and that, and we were finding, like I said, remains. Because after a while, and I know you probably remember this, it rained, probably was like the 4th day afterwards. We had that rain fall. And I was like, yeah, cheering on. I'm like, no.
Yeah, right.
You don't understand. You got people who say, you got holes that are there with paper, with pulverized concrete, and you mix that together, you got, and it hardens because it was hot. And it's dry, and it made paper mache. So you're walking, you'll go right through a hole not knowing, because it was a false pour.
Wow.
So that was not good in the aspects. So there's another one of those things that you had to worry about that some people didn't even, they probably over there, rain, never thought, wow, I never really looked at it like that.
Right.
So when they got back, they wanted to do a study on us. So Pennsylvania University set up the study on the handlers. So they had us do swabs in our mouths, so to do DNA, to see what our DNA was going to be like, if it was going to fluctuate, and see if it changed in any way. And then they had us do these questions so we did it for a 5-year study. It was a controlled study. And then they would get their outcome of what was going to happen with the handlers and how they reacted after all this. They always did it on the anniversary of 9/11 for 5 years. So during that, we were into the 2nd year going into that. I think it was Imes wanted to do another study on the dogs, same thing, a 5-year study. So they wanted to do it on the nasal cavity of the dogs to see how it would affect the dogs. And so thus then they're like, okay, so they had to get a hold of us. We did it. So it was all at the same time they were doing all these studies. So in order for us to, before they would give Imes our information, they had to check with us. Would you like to participate? Because it's private. You're dealing in like a medical, so it's HIPAA laws and stuff. Yes, I had no problem. So a majority of the guys did, the ones that they could track down, that they had good contact with. And so they got us. We were in that. They came in, and then they contacted me. Well, in that time frame, this was like around Thanksgiving, my dog developed an abscess tooth. So this was that was like around Thanksgiving, just after Thanksgiving, around that time. They call me like around end of Thanksgiving going into December saying, hey, would you be willing to do this test? And I'm like, yeah. I go, well, my dog's got an abscess too. Like, don't worry about it. We're dealing in the nasal cavity. So it's the tooth. We're looking at the nasal cavity. So I'm like, oh, okay. So they had all our health records and stuff for a veterinarian. So they'd seen the dog's bill of health and everything. They knew what it was. So they shipped us to tell us where we had to go, flew us to where we needed to go get the MRIs done and stuff like that. And so we got back, and they says, don't worry if you don't hear from us, because it was during Christmas time. He says, once we get through the holidays, because it's a controlled study, 1 radiologist, 1 veterinarian that's going to read everything. And then they come out with what the output is, and they could study it for those X amount of time. So after the 1st year, they would see what was going on when they did it. Well, after the 1st year, going into that January after 9/11, going in there, they contacted us. And my vet calls me and goes, he says, what's up? What's going on, Joaquin? How are you at? I'm like, good. I go, hey, we getting ready to pull that tooth? He says, well, where are you at? I go, I'm at home. He says, I got some news for you. And I'm like, well, what is it? He goes, you know that study that they're doing with Imes? He says, they contacted me. He says, Joaquin, he says, we're not dealing with an abscess tooth. He says, your dog's got a tumor the size of a lemon.
Oh, man.
The size of what? I go, you didn't? He goes, I don't know how. He says, this is crazy, because we did x-rays and there was nothing there. And that was only 3 weeks ago. This MRI was done, like I said, over 3 weeks ago. And now that thing's the size of a lemon. They're saying it's aggressive. Yeah. And this thing is growing, and now bells and whistles went off. I'm like, well, how long is it only there? They said, we don't know. Joaquin, we don't know. Wow. He says, it was serious, because now you got a controlled, we're already in one study, and now we're already going into that study that half of that year when the Imes wanted to start it up, and then he develops that, and it was like, I think it was 2002 or 3. I can't remember my dates. It's just been, it's 20 years.
Sure.
So you're trying to get everything down in the book and stuff. But they said, but Imes wants to save that dog. They want to save Rook's life. They know this is going to need some surgery in that, and they want to save it because now they can prove whatever their study is that you got a 9/11 dog here. If it's in the dog, there's going to be more dogs showing this.
Yes.
Could it be people?
Right.
That was the big thing. Is there people? Is it affecting the people? Because see, the animals don't live as long as we do. So I'm assuming people would assume the dogs would already be dead before anything would show up in the dogs. So that's where the catch is at. Plus I had 2 dogs down there. So I had the sister and the brother. The sister never was in blood sister. They were the same, mom, dad, just a year apart, the same parent. So that one didn't have it and this one had it. So there was no way, no, I got the sister. She was there too telling me. So there's no way.
So you don't think it was, if I understand you right, you don't think it was related to?
Yeah, it wasn't like a genetic thing that was there because I contacted my breeder broker that dealt. He's like, no, we've never had any issues. We'll pull all our records, show you, we got everything because these dogs are all, they're pedigree line. They can't, so they had that. And that was the big thing. And after a while, you're looking at something that just in a matter of weeks, how does an abscess turn into a grow? I mean, I'm telling you, it was a lemon, the size of a good medium-sized lemon, right in that mandible area.
So you do believe it was related to Ground Zero?
Yeah. Because I had buddies that.
And let me ask you this, if you don't mind, and I there's a rule I have on Unscripted. If you ever want to just say pass, you can say pass. How are you? Were you affected physically at all by Ground Zero? And I'm not trying to open up some big thing. I'm just curious. Are you good, or did you feel effects as well?
When I got back, I'm an avid runner. I would run. I love running and stuff like that. I couldn't run no more. My lungs were shot because of all the junk that we breathed in. And I would blow my nose and blood would come out because of the glass and irritation. You're talking asbestos, crushed concrete, glass. Wow. God only knows what's in there, the carcinogens and everything.
Right.
And it took about a year, little over a year, for me to even get back to and how people could relate is somebody that had gotten COVID and what they feel like and what their body felt like. That's the exact same symptoms I had when I got.
Wow.
Did the exact identical symptoms.
But you're doing well
breathing,
now.
Really, yeah. So
you're doing well now.
I'm doing well now.
Good. Okay.
I praise God because, like I said, I look at I could be dead. I'm a walking miracle stand. I lost my partner to that garbage that was been down.
Yes. And I know John Stewart. I love what John Stewart has done for those, for the firefighters that were there and their families and those that worked the pile, as you said. I appreciate so much how hard he's worked and pushed for benefits and other things for the people that sacrifice so much for that. So, man, I've taken a ton of your time. Like, this has been really, I wanted us to reflect on September 11th because I don't want us ever to forget. You know what I mean? And I think, I hope anyone that's listening to this has had a chance to see that it wasn't just us watching on TV, and our lives got a little disrupted and maybe we got stuck somewhere and we couldn't get home, and I don't mean to diminish that. I don't mean to, I don't in any way want to make light of that. But at the same time, like I always say, you got to take your so-called problems and put them in quotations. Because at the end of the day, you left everything and went and in many ways served our country at 9/11, at the Ground Zero, at the pile. You served our country. You served our nation. You and Rookie. You sacrificed for us. And I don't ever want to forget that as a nation, because yes, it is heartbreaking and we lost so many people, but there's a lot of people that also went and served, and I don't ever want to forget that. So thank you. This is what I'm trying to say. Thank you for your service.
Yeah. And it's like I said, I'm not the hero. Those that ran into those buildings and they gave the supreme sacrifice so we could have what we have. That's freedom. And we take an oath as police officers do. Same constitution the military does. We're just the civilian version of the military. And I knew I had a job. Rookie had a job. And, people says, well, if you knew what you knew now, would you do it? I'm like, doggone right I would. And I'd be right there first standing in line. Let's go. And, that Amazing. Dog, he touched a lot of lives, not only just with children, but he provided closure. Yes, we will, and I did. I caught a little bit of hell because when I got back, because they're like, because when they found after Rookie died, well, if he wouldn't have never done, I got the keyboard warriors that would send me messages.
Sure.
After
right.
Rookie had passed
right.
because of I love animals and out there, you're not supposed to do that. And I really took a beating over that, but I don't care what it is. That's the way Rook would want it because he did not want to leave that pile. We kept going. I mean, you look at the photographs and you look at that big photograph you see behind me, that you see standing back there, that's to honor all the search dogs. Rookie was that poster dog. Now, when you see search dogs and they go out to be deployed, they're all checked. Every dog's checked before and checked after when they come back from these big disasters, so they don't have something happen to them. So Iams really set that stage with that dog. It was kind of like the poster child for it. And, and the viewers that are going to see there, nobody's ever seen that photograph. That's the first time in 20 years that I've really kind of posted it. It's in the book when I posted the book, but I mean, a lot of people really don't know about it, and it depicts the whole story of everything that you see there. The ghost towers, where they're standing, to where he's coming up from the pile to the firemen. You can see where they're down there doing the water for him with the dogs and that, where they're talking to. That's the therapy where we standing next to that pile right there, where the guy snapped a picture and actually sent it to me to the firemen that are checking the trucks that are all damaged that were left there. Those are all actual photographs that I had taken that were there at that moment of when I was at ground zero to honor the fallen, how would you say, our brothers and sisters in police, fire, and EMS and that perished that were there. And it is just, I look at it was that I had an honor. I didn't go down there for myself. I went down there for you and everybody else that couldn't be there. I stood in that gap for you guys. Yeah. Because I knew you couldn't make it because you got families in that. But when I went down there, they said, well, why would you? Because they said, where are you from? I said, I'm from Michigan. Michigan, what the heck would you? I said, because I knew if it would have happened where we were at, you'd be here too. 100%. I'm here representing those that can't be here. That's why I'm here when I would speak to them and tell them, I said, there's people that are there crying at home, trying to figure out what they can do. I'm here representing them in the flesh and they're being their representative. I stood in the gap for them. Yes. Because they're praying right now for you. And that's what Rook and I did.
Yes. And so there's a few things I want to do. One, thank you, because I'm honored that you would share that picture with my audience. And again, most people are going to hear this on audio, but what I promise I will do if you're listening to this is I will create a short clip at a minimum and just to show the picture, because I'm honored that you would share that with us, because Rookie served this country. Rookie served this nation and sacrificed himself for this nation after 9/11. And I don't know that there's any other way I can put that. And I hope that's okay and respectful for you, for me to say that on your behalf. Rookie served our country. And because, look, at the end of the day, that is important. And we can never, ever forget 9/11 and those that made the sacrifices, even someone like Rookie who went and sacrificed and gave, and someone like yourself who took Rookie there. And so the keyboard warriors, I won't even say what I'm thinking right now because it's not nice, even though it's unscripted. I'm not going to say it, but what I will say is you served your country, and it's a lot easier to sit behind a keyboard and type things like tweets when you've never served and you don't have the compassion and heart. Now I'm getting mad. I'm an angry American, I guess. But at the end of the day, man, it's really easy to send off a tweet when you've never put on the boots and given and sacrificed. And look, I never served this country in the military, but I have so much respect for those that have, and I'm thankful for that. And I honor that. And so thank you for the interview, but man, most of all, thank you for the sacrifice that you and Rookie went through. And I'm glad you're doing well physically. And I'm heartbroken that he had to sacrifice, but man, that's it. It's sacrifice. It's heart, not thinking of yourself. It's putting others above yourself. And as you said, standing in the gap. So I'm just so honored you were on today. So before I get off of here, and I want to make sure we cover it, the book, where can I get the book? Amazon, correct? Where else can I get the book?
Some are, there's on Amazon. It's like a book company. You can order it through them. If you search, and then it's also an ebook, you can go in there. So there's two ways if people want to get the ebook. It's what is it, the Nook or whatever, how they got the different names from. You can look it up and get it loaded, downloaded that way also, and buy it that way. If I'm at books, I know, I'm not sure. I'm in Michigan, so a lot of times I'll do book sales, but I can get you the information, and then they can just like order it and then if they go through their book companies, they'll be able to track it down.
Awesome.
To be able to so they can find the book if they want to buy it and get it.
And I'll have the link in this post to this podcast. So anybody listening to this podcast, just go check out the narrative, and there'll be a link in there, because I want to make sure that we support you and the book and Rookie. I mean, again, you guys made a sacrifice, and the book is called Michigan and Rookie, right?
Yeah, Michigan and Rookie, Guardians of the Night.
Michigan and Rookie, Guardians of the Night. And I do know I found it on Amazon. So that's Michigan and Rookie, Guardians of the Night. Go Amazon that right now if you're listening, and go get the book. Support him and everything that he's done, and just coming on the show, man. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I think I might have lost your audio. Are you still there?
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
the audio went really bad for a second, so I'm not. I think you're still there, but
Can you hear me now?
There you go. That's a little better. So, man, I just want to thank you. Thank you for coming on. I know you've been very busy. I know you're very much in demand right now to come and tell your story. And I'm so honored. Thankful for our friend Kurt that connected us, but I'm so honored that you would come on and just and share and reflect on something that, look, at the end of the day, it's not easy. I mean, like you said, that can't be easy to go back and revisit those times and those thoughts. But I think it's important for us, and I'm so thankful and honored that you would share with us.
Well, great. Anytime you need me or whatever, feel free. I got the other dogs are up and doing stuff. Little Chief, like I said, he's up and running, doing movies now.
There you go.
We got into that. That's another story. So
there you go. Well, my friend, I'll be thinking and praying of you. This is going to go up tomorrow, which is the 10th. I'll be thinking of you on Saturday, because in the days that follow. And I'm just so appreciative of you and your time, and everybody listening, go get the book, and let's honor Joaquin and Rookie the best we can.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Unscripted podcast with your host, Aaron Conrad, from his studio at the Junction in Old Hilliard. Make sure to like, share, follow, and review on your favorite podcast platforms. Also, make sure to check out my song Great and Mighty One on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you find your music. We'll see you next time on Unscripted with Aaron Conrad.